Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dev Diary. Today we continue work on our metagame inspired by GameMaker's recent Notice Me Game Jam. Now, last time we completed the tasks our player must endure to earn that moolah. They included things as simple as deleting some files, testing code, and figuring out sequences using similar mechanics from games like Wordle. It was another solid step forward in this bizarre experience, one we'll be finishing today. So first up, there are a ton of new variables that control a plethora of different things. Most are self-explanatory, so let's take a look at the new functions. The completion of a task was made into its own function to sync all tasks to the same results, which include payouts for said completions. Now, our first major new function is the update function. This function is called when the update timer reaches 0, thus updating our game. The version number of the in-game software is increased, which actually has purpose beyond cosmetics. Every 10 updates, rent fees will be deducted from the player's money. If they're unable to pay, the game is over. So, since the updates increase at the rate of 0.1, the player is able to keep track of just how many updates they have until rent day. This function also deletes completed tasks from the player's list and generates a random amount of new tasks. And finally, this function then initiates our second new function, the cut tasks function. Now, this function is pretty simple. It generates a list of 6 entries and deletes an amount of them based on the argument provided. That data then determines which tasks are available until the next update, where they are then randomized again. Originally, the plan was to simply provide a chance for the entire system to crash, but that really ruined the flow. So instead, using our new final function, check task, only random parts of the system will crash. And this allows the player a higher chance to continue earning money, if they're lucky. Now, 2 new buttons were also added to the game, one to manage hunger and the other to manage energy. Each of these buttons feature a corresponding meter for their respective attributes, and clicking on these icons will do the following. As long as the player has enough money, the hunger button will replenish some of the player's hunger meter, as well as their energy meter, at the cost of some of that money, of course. The rest button will send the player into a rest mode, where the game will continue without them, and the player must wait for their energy to completely replenish before controls are restored. And each of these meters continues to drop over time, even during the update process. Hunger is also continuously depleted while resting. And as I teased in the very first episode, there are consequences to neglecting these meters. When energy is at 0 and hunger is almost depleted, the screen will literally begin to blur, which was incredibly easy to implement thanks to GameMaker's effects/filters feature. If the player does not immediately tend to their needs while in this blurred state, the player will then pass out, forcing them into the sleep state to recover. Again, given more time, I'd likely add more to this and make it fancier and crazier, but given the time I had, this wasn't half bad for a visual effect. Anyway, that just about did it for new features, so for one last time, let's take a look at the draw code. Now, given how different the update, default, rest, and game over states were, I decided to just draw everything needed for each state in their respective conditionals. So everything needed for the game over screen is in the game over case, and the default has majority of the mess, including the content needed to display our new functions and features. And finally, the sleep screen, which basically draws over everything but the game over screen. Again, just the largest mess imaginable, yet somehow works exactly as needed. Probably not optimized as well as I think it is, but it works, and that's all that really matters with this one at this point. And there we have it, a night of the update in its entirety. As always, the code seems like such a tangled mess of wires, but somehow manages to work as intended. And the gameplay is actually pretty stressful, likely due to the lack of balance. Having to manage hunger, energy, and money while doing micro tasks throughout, all while a timer amplifies the pressure. I think those tasks being pretty simple was the right call, because the original concept would have been just way too punishing of an experience. Now, while a huge part of doing this project was to turn frustration into productivity, I've also been wanting to improve my player UI/UX knowledge. And this project definitely gave me some great insight into all of the minutiae of said design. Like, creating something static is pretty easy, but having moving meters, highlights, and all that extra detail, at least working with GameMaker, actually takes some real dedication. And much like I've been doing with the implementation of my button system, I can now take this knowledge, apply it to other projects, and hopefully improve them. So all in all, a fun project to work on and surprisingly functional, to the point that I could actually probably release this thing, after some cleanup, which is honestly kind of rare for these Dev Diary projects. Anyway, with all that said, this brings us to the end of our little meta project and today's dev diary. So if you enjoyed today's entry, consider leaving a like. Be sure to also subscribe and hit that bell if you haven't already. And let me know what you think of the project now that it's completed. Leave all your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.